and we are ecstatic here to have our partner and one of the thought leaders in the space of high quality carbon credits, Tradewater here. And I have Jenny Morgan and Kirsten Love here this morning to do some presentations and Q&A. We'll kick it over to you guys in a second and let you guys do some intros on yourselves. I'm Richard Donaldson. I work here with Requis. We'll be moderating here today. So again, as people drift in, please by all means type questions in the chat window. We'll be monitoring. I'll be taking a look at that throughout the entire presentation and Q&A at the end. And the overall presentation format today, we're going to have Jenny and Kirsten give us a little bit of presentation and education on some of the differences and differentiators within the world of carbon offsets. There's been a lot of interesting information, a lot of good and bad kind of press going back and forth. But I think one of the things that people need to understand is there are actually, through all the noise, some real, actual, practical solutions and answers. And Tradewater represents one of those. And one of the reasons why we've partnered together is they're in the process, and I'm going to let them get through it, of tangible offsets, meaning it's not just buying something that kind of may or may not result in an actual offset. They're in the business of actually targeting some of the most offensive climate chemicals out there. So refrigerants, chemicals, things that actually make huge impacts, even more so than some of the carbon reduction things that are going out there. So, really want to get into the meat of what we're trying to do today and provide an education around kind of the carbon markets, but specifically what to look for in carbon offsets. And I think with that kind of introduction, I'm going to kind of turn it over to Jenny and Kirsten, let you guys go. Presentation can be about 20, 25 minutes, and then we'll have Q&A at the end for the balance of the half an hour. So Jenny and Kirsten, if you guys want to pick up from there and give some introductions yourselves and go right through the preso.
Sure. Kirsten, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Richard, and thank you, Requis, for having us here and as a partner. I'm Kirsten Love. I'm Director of Market Development here at Tradewater, and I've been with the company for 3 years. I'll pass it to Jenny.
Yeah, and my name's Jenny Morgan. I was actually a Tradewater customer for a few years, and I was just excited to join the team and have a more direct influence on how we can apply climate solutions globally. I'm of the belief that every job and every role is a climate role, and so I'm coming with that type of mindset of bringing that to all of you of how you can get involved, whether your role is climate specific or not. It still has a huge impact on sustainability.
And before you guys get in, and I'll do this as the moderator, I'm going to call some audibles as we kind of go through here, right? So as it were, and I think it's also important, I think Jenny and Kirsten, you guys kind of flew over it. One, where are you guys both physically located? Jenny, start with you. And then also Jenny and Kirsten, kind of what brought you guys to Tradewater? I think your origin stories are also kind of accretive to what we're about to get into with why you find Tradewater amongst all the things that are out there. It's not like you guys are just looking for carbon offset because you think it's cool. There's something specific about Tradewater that attracted both of you and kept both of you there. So Jenny, I'll start with you. Where are you at and kind of how did you get involved with Tradewater? Your origin story, as it were.
Yeah, I'm based in Seattle, Washington. I was working at Microsoft for about 5 years. In 2020, the wildfire smoke was getting pretty heavy in our area. We had a newborn in 2020. A lot was happening that year. And the smoke was so heavy that my family, my 2 kids, my husband, myself, and our 2 big dogs couldn't leave our home for 9 days. The smoke was starting to actually come into the house, and luckily we had air purifiers and stuff here, but there was a shortage in the area and a lot of people were freaking out. They didn't have air conditioning either, because that typically isn't a requirement in this area, or at least it wasn't. And that experience made me want to be a bit more involved in climate action. I was doing everything kind of right before, but I wanted to do more. And so I started educating myself, reading a few digestible books. I heard a podcast about Tradewater, basically about how the quality of the work that Tradewater is doing has the utmost impact right now. And it's not an invention that's got a lot of potential or something. It was something that's tangible. You know that it's happening. It's verified. It's globally impactful. All of those things really resonated with me. So I brought them on as a vendor for Microsoft. We became a carbon neutral platform at Microsoft. So just my organization, my team was carbon neutral. Everything that we did, our videos and learning, our learning platform, basically. We worked together in that capacity for about 2 years. And then Kirsten said, hey, do you want to work with me? And I was like, tomorrow, jumped to work with Tradewater full time, and I'm just really happy to be able to speak with individuals that are passionate about it as well.
And I'm also going to kick over to Kirsten here, so there's going to be a natural handoff. But again, thanks for that, because I think it's an important part of this premise to your presentation, right? Is you both have your own individual takes on both, at a high level, you're into sustainability, but like anything else, when we talk about greenwashing quite a bit, there's a lot of fluff that's out there. And so both of you being very practical, right? You wanted to actually affect real change, not necessarily just talk about it. And as you did your own research, Jenny, just to reiterate, you could have gone, I'm assuming, to a number of places, right? That, in your origin story, you've got some fires, you've got some, impact from climate change, however you want to look at that. You were looking to kind of be more proactive. You could have gone anywhere, right? You could have gone into there's a gazillion different places you could have ended up. So just to double click on that, through your research, what led you to Tradewater and specifically what they're doing? Like, why of all the things, you could have been at the UN, you could have been in the World Economic Forum, you could have focused on circularity.
Yeah, I wanted something now. I came out of that experience with a sense of urgency. And so I wanted something now. I wanted to do something right now today. And so that's what made me go more. I'm incredibly excited about all the things that are happening in this space, but I needed something that could give me value today. And so that's what differentiated Tradewater from some of the other options.
Well, I also think, and I'm going to hand off to Kirsten here, but I also kind of completing that story again, I think that's super important for people to understand, even in today's seminar, right? There's a lot of conversation around long-term kind of planning. We all know at a conceptual level that we as human beings need to do something to be more sustainable, reduce our consumption footprints, whatever you want to look at on this planet, even for future planets, right? But I think it's critical to understand that even in your own work, doing sustainability at Microsoft, having the options to go anywhere, your practical decisioning was, I need something that's doing something now, not talking about it, not architecting a solution for the 50-year plan. And that led you to not only Tradewater, but specifically the work they're doing around the offsets, which in this case are refrigerants. They're directly impactful in a huge way. And I think that's going to be the bulk of your presentation, but I think that kind of sets the stage also, kind of why you got here. I think it helps also kind of let everyone in the audience understand your presentation a little bit better. So thank you for that. Kirsten, sounds like you were responsible for bringing Jenny. So hey.
It was one of the best things I've ever done at Tradewater. I'll say that.
Right. And just a reminder, where are you located before you get into your origin story? Yep.
Yeah, so I'm located in Chicago. That's actually where one of Tradewater's headquarters are. We also have headquarters in San Jose, Costa Rica, but I'm in the Chicagoland area. And I've been with Tradewater, as I mentioned, 3 years. I come actually from supply chain, which is one of the topics we'll cover here. I worked for a company that was the backbone of McDonald's supply chain. They're called Hobby. And so I did a number of things there for them, including project management, account management, marketing analytics, and strategy. And I honestly fell into this work. So I was recruited by Tradewater from Hobby because I had that range of experience, and it was really important for me to be able to use that range of experience to have impact on the world. And I quickly fell into the sustainability world, and doing a lot of research, was introduced to Project Drawdown, which listed refrigerant management as one of the top things we can do for climate action. And that's what Tradewater was focused on at the time, and it still is, but has added to their portfolio, which was quite interesting for me, again, having maximum impact in what I'm doing. And also for me personally, as an African-American woman, finding a place where I could have a seat at the table for sustainability solutions was really interesting and important, and was something that attracted me to Tradewater, because our co-founders, Tim and Gabe, are really, really cognizant of that notion of profit, people, and planet, and they can all live together, and creating opportunities for minorities to have a part in the solution, creating spaces for leadership to come from all types of places, and everyone, again, collectively coming up with the best solutions and the best way to scale was really, really attractive to me around Tradewater. So max impact and max ways to scale. So
Awesome. And let me also double click on them because again, we've got some pretty big names here in both of your backgrounds. We've got Microsoft, we've got McDonald's. These are pretty globally recognized companies, multinationals who also have their own initiatives when it comes to sustainability, right?
Yeah.
So while you were there, I'm just kind of curious, what were you seeing before you joined Tradewater in the realm? Because this would have been around, I'm guessing 2018 when you made the switch-ish?
2019. Yeah, 2019-ish.
Close? 2019, right? So that's not
Yeah.
that long ago, only 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So we weren't quite in the pandemic. We weren't quite yet, all things supply chain, all things circular, sustainable. There was just bubbling. But you were working at McDonald's in the meantime. What was going on vis-a-vis McDonald's and sustainability? And then kind of how that led you to your decisioning to go join Tradewater?
If I'm completely honest, the two were completely separate.
Okay.
So I worked in a strategic space around marketing analytics, but I will say McDonald's, being the big ship it is, was very, very conscious about the decisions they made because they often changed industry. So they made the decision to remove foam cups. When I was there, I was a part of that project. We made the decision to remove labeling within the Monopoly game on in a couple of areas. And so it was definitely a conversation that was happening, but to be completely honest, seeing myself in a full sustainability role wasn't something that I saw. Again, I brought it up very briefly, but there's not a lot of people that look like me in the space. So it wasn't something that was top of mind. But Tradewater kind of reaching out to me and being like doubling down on that fact and saying, no, we need voices like yours. We need skill sets like yours was very interesting to me. So for me, it was I really honestly fell into it, but I'm very glad that I did. And as you said, I wouldn't have stayed this long. There's many of other opportunities out there. I am very passionate about DE&I and being able to bring both things together. And if we don't have a planet, quite honestly, we can't do anything else. So I'm very excited to be a part of this work right now. And as Jenny said, working on solutions that have impact right now is extremely exciting and fulfilling for sure.
And I think that's again, it's a different origin story, but also equally important because both of you, Jenny, pun intended here, had a burning issue, literally, right? That kind of catalyzed her to get towards, something that actually began to have impact. What I think is also interesting for you, Kirsten, is also a great premise to your guys' presentation is that you actually were in supply chain at McDonald's, right? Probably one of the world's foremost supply chains from a management perspective. And whether you knew it or not at the time, you were teed up to have a massive career kind of springboard, right? Pre-pandemic, because everything's all supply chain. Like you, I'm sure, being recruited all over the place right now because of your background and unique skill sets. Yet through all of that opportunity, you stuck with what was going on at Tradewater and you kind of flew over it. But, you obviously, the world's your oyster, right? Given where you were at. And you've stuck with where you're with Tradewater and specifically what Tradewater is doing and evolving, right? Like I think that's super important to understand because I think that goes back to what you guys are about to present here, right? And you may even want to kind of, expand on that a little bit because I think the audience would help to understand like what you saw. What was it about that for you that like, you weren't thinking sustainability necessarily kind of directly, but somehow like this has really clicked for you.
For sure. It's a major impact that we're having, and it's cool to be a part of that for sure.
Awesome. Okay, well, great. I think that really helps both you guys. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's going to really lend into the presentation what you guys can do. So again, I'll turn it over to you, and the floor is yours. You guys go right ahead.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. And I, again, encourage everyone to put questions or comments in the chat. This should be interactive and kind of give some clarity to any questions that you might have or any information about us. Some of the things that we're going to discuss today around this sense of empowerment and solutions for all is we're talking about how climate solutions are available for everyone. If your role is climate specific, that's great. If it's not, that's great too. And how climate is something that's relevant to everyone, your customers, employees, your supply chain, all demand it so that you can be a profitable and purposeful contributor in business. As we've alluded to, there are projects that are impacting climate change today, and we'll go over kind of some of the details there, but again, answer questions that might come up since we might all not be experts in greenhouse gases yet. And then the tools and resources for collective impact. So how do I get involved? Great, I have all this information now what? And so we'll kind of go over that a bit too, and then open it up for Q&A. So one of the most impactful things that I've seen is that small businesses represent 90% of the business population. So businesses of all sizes need to be contributing to decarbonization efforts. We need to be aware of our behaviors, how they are harmful to the environment, how they influence social change and influence, and engage in these types of inclusive and sustainable practices. So they represent 90% of the population. They provide over 60% of employment, 55% of GDP in developed economies. And so then that translates, if you need more facts about how much we could all come together and contribute, that's over 332 million small businesses around the globe. If you just think about that, if each of us did one small act, it could be really powerful. What I see from this image is empowerment. It's in our hands. It's something that we can control. It's not just governments or nonprofits or large enterprise. This is us. We're the bulk of what makes up this population. To speak a bit more about supply chains, 80% of emissions are derived from supply chains. So large enterprises, that small fraction of business, know that. And so in their efforts to decarbonize their supply chains, they're looking to small and medium-sized businesses to see how they can contribute. They want to see their opportunity and be able to see what their supply chain is doing so that everyone benefits from that. So there's small businesses that are benefiting, as well as they're increasing their value proposition to larger enterprises. It's all supporting this business effort as well as sustainability effort. And I've listed here just a few things that go towards sustainability. It's also cost effectiveness. It increases your value proposition. It's attractive to your customers. It establishes a sense of brand loyalty and trust. Individuals and customers want to be engaged with organizations that have this level of impact. And so we know the value, we've seen the level of impact. So now is a good time to introduce ourselves and see where Tradewater fits into this whole ecosystem.
Yeah, and just really quickly, Jenny, on the supply chain, I think what you said about the empowerment piece and just how impactful if everyone does a little bit. The supply chain is our way to connect with each other, and there is a ripple effect that can happen. When small businesses step up and do the right thing, then it sets the best practice within that value chain for everyone to kind of step up and do something different. And Tradewater ourselves, we are a small business, so we understand just how hard it is to do that, but how mighty a small business can be as well. At our core, we are a mission-based B Corp environmental project development firm, and we are focused on the most effective environmental solutions. And those solutions include the collection, control, and destruction of non-CO2 gases. And we are strategically focused on non-CO2 gases because, one, they're super potent. They are short-lived climate pollutants, the ones that we're focused on, and they accelerate climate change in the short term. So when Jenny talked about solutions for now, that's what we're focused on. Also, if you hear the conversation around decarbonization and sequestering carbon, these gases are often overlooked. One, they're not CO2 directly, so there's a lot of conversation on what do we do around CO2. And we talk about sequestering carbon or other gases. These gases cannot be sequestered. So the work that we do to collect, control, and destroy them before they reach the atmosphere is extremely important. And the gases that I'm referring to are CFCs, which are old refrigerants, as well as HCFCs, halons, which are non-water-based fire suppressants found in aviation as well as data centers, and then methane. And methane has many sources, but we're focused on methane from abandoned and orphaned oil and gas wells. What distinguishes ourselves is that we do the work ourselves. So we do all that project development from start to finish. And what we bring is a climate benefit to the market that is represented by a high quality, verifiable, globally recognized carbon offset credit. We have destroyed over 5.7 million tons to date, but we are on a mission to destroy 3 million tons of greenhouse gases every single year. And we believe, kind of what I said at the top of the hour, that people, profit, and planet can all live together, and we can create economic opportunities while improving our environment all over the world. And so as we talk about our work all over the world, we have been scaling our impact to be global. So as I mentioned, over 5.7 million tons so far, but just next year, we're hoping to do 3 million. And that's really through partners like Ruckwis and others that support our work. We are developing projects in 11 different countries around the world right now. And through our work, we are meeting the UN's Sustainable Development Goals of responsible consumption and production, climate action, as well as decent work and economic growth. And then that economic piece that I talked about, when we do our work around the world, we are investing in local communities, either through the purchase of refrigerant or creating jobs. And to date, we have been able to invest over $35 million into local communities around the world. What really quick before I hand it back over to Jenny, as you guys are thinking about climate solutions, and I think Richard hit on this too, that there's a lot of question or concern around what makes a meaningful climate solution. How can you really tell that this is a climate solution that you can trust and where you know your dollar is being spent responsibly? There's a few things to look for, and this is just generic across the industry. The two main things are permanency and additionality. So permanency means that there's no risk of the gases re-emitting into the atmosphere. And I hate to use this as an example because forestry projects are extremely important, but it's the most tangible example. So let's say that a forest is planted and then, God forbid, it burns down. Those emissions are re-emitted into the atmosphere. So when you're looking at projects, you want to make sure that those risk factors for re-emission are taken into account and that they have put together risk mitigation plans. For us, the gases that we work with, we collect them and we destroy them permanently. So there is no risk of them reaching the atmosphere again, or that the work being reversed. So again, it's not that you shouldn't support forestry projects, but just make sure that those risk factors are addressed and that they're taking those into consideration. The other really, really important factor that you want to consider when looking at climate solutions is additionality. And that means that if not for the sell of a carbon offset credit or you supporting that work, that it wouldn't happen. So for our work specifically, there is no end-of-life solution for these greenhouse gases. They were banned for the refrigerants and halons, they were banned via the Montreal Protocol, meaning that they can't be produced, but there was no end-of-life solution. So they just sit and they're put into they're put into canisters that rust over time. And so eventually they will leak into our atmosphere if we don't proactively go out and collect and destroy them. There are also limited finances to do that. There's no incentive to destroy. So if not for us coming in, it wouldn't happen. There are some other examples of, when you think about additionality, making sure that, again, if not for your support and if not for the sale of a carbon offset credit and utilizing that market, the work would not happen. You would not consider that project to be additional. So again, those two key things you want to look at. Other things that support those are accuracy. So can you look at the paperwork? Can you look at the documentation and be sure that what's being done is accurate? You can also look to carbon registries to make sure that when someone is listed on a carbon registry, that means that they're adhering to certain protocols and that they're being checked for the work that they're doing. You also want to make sure that there's some third-party verification. We are listed on leading carbon registries and we involve third-party verifiers, sometimes even double verifying our projects just to show that accuracy. And we're very open book when it comes to our paperwork and how we do the work. You also want to think about responsibility. Are there co-benefits? As I mentioned, we hit certain UN SDGs. You also want to make sure, for us, we try to make it easy. So our documentation is transparent. We're very open to answering any questions and providing ongoing support, especially for small businesses, because we know how that is in terms of trying to do a lot with a little. And also high impact. So for us, we want to make sure that our solutions are accessible to anyone. So individuals can support. We have solutions for small businesses, and we also work with large corporations. So again, we're hitting the scale, the range of folks to make sure that we're high impact. And we just left a quote here. I don't know if some of you guys are familiar with John Foley, but he's the executive director of Project Drawdown, and he's been on record to say offsets, you got to be kind of cautious around them. But he's very supportive of our offset credits because they're tangible. You can actually measure them. We can show you the canisters, the gases. We destroy them, and it's all documented, and it's very crystal clear there. So again, just a couple of things to think about when you're looking at climate solution, but I will pass it back to Jenny to really talk about what does that mean for small businesses and how you can get involved.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of information. And so you might be feeling inspired and motivated, but then it kind of looks like this for you. You're juggling all these plates and now you have to go through a maze to kind of get to a green and sustainable globe. And so we're taking that to an account. We get that. Kirsten and I juggle many plates. We have a team of 40, and so we're doing a lot of impactful work with 40 individuals. And so an organization of 40. So we know small business, we know that you're juggling a lot. So what we're looking to do is basically remove that. If you're leading a team, if you're leading a business, if you're an entrepreneur, your time is valuable. So we're making sure that we're taking that into account and trying to see how we can really be there for you as an ally. Your actions need to be efficient. They need to be effective. They need to satisfy sustainable growth. You need to be able to communicate it clearly and accurately with your customers. All of that we're putting into place for small businesses so that you're set up for success. And it's just an easy way to integrate it into your business. How we're doing that is truly through empowerment. So you can calculate your footprint for free. Made it really digestible. So it's basically the business operations, what it takes to go online, get on your computer, connect with your vendors, connect with your customers. What does that work? How does that work generate emissions for your business? And you can calculate that for free. You can see how it all falls. Is it your facilities? Is it the electricity that you're using to power your businesses, your buildings? Is it your vendors and supply chain? How's employee behavior impacting your emissions? So this calculator is really easy and approachable. And so it can give you a bit of knowledge. And so data and knowledge is the first step in empowerment. You can then offset your emissions by supporting Tradewater's work. So you're supporting the climate benefits that Tradewater provides. You can do it any way you want based on your budget. If you want to have a monthly subscription, an annual subscription, those are all things that you are empowered to influence based on what your budget is. And then it's not only about offsets, it's also about reducing your footprint. So now you have all this knowledge, you're supporting the climate benefits. Now what? Are there some energy efficiency changes that you can make? Your water usage? Is there different ways that you can address employee travel? Things like that you can take into consideration that will lower your emissions. And so this is all things that we provide really easily. You have a dashboard and a platform that you can leverage, and it just makes it so that it's something that everyone can understand. And so I'm kind of showing just quickly how quick it is and easy it is to look at the calculator here. But it's all about the information and a tool that can just help you understand how you fit into this whole ecosystem of climate solutions. You're putting in your energy usage, your electricity, your recycling, all of those things. You're going through all of that employee behavior, how many flights, what's the commute look like, things like that, trying to just assess how much you're emitting each year. And so check that out. It's free. You can save your results and see what that final outcome is. But it's a lot of really valuable information. And then I mentioned some of the benefits that come with environmental impact. Through us and just integrating that into your business, you're able to encourage your customers to come along the journey with you. And your customers care about that. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know how you operate, what values align with theirs. That's the way that businesses are establishing this sense of trust and loyalty. We want to provide resources that are continuously looking at ways to reduce your emissions. So if you're in a unique situation where your business needs to look at a specific section of it, let's talk about that. We want our resources to be evergreen. 5 years ago, we wouldn't have talked about virtual events as much as we would today. And so we want to talk about ways to be more sustainable in virtual event delivery. Those are things that we're constantly keeping up on trends across all industries so that we can help you continue to have a more intentional footprint. That language that you can communicate what your climate commitment is. You can understand a bit more about what climate action is. We can help you put that information out on social media so that your customers can know what's going on, amplifying your business through different media opportunities like this one with Request. These are all things that we do with our customers and our allies. So you can see some of the brand loyalty that's being established here in real life. Not only just your customers, but also think about your employees. Retention and attrition is very important. Hiring talented workforce is something that small, medium, and large businesses are trying to constantly think of. And employees want to be in a job that is more fulfilling, whether it is an environmental services job or just a job that takes that into consideration and you make pens. All of those things, the employees want to know that they're going to bed at night, that they've made a difference today and tomorrow. And then again, that customer engagement. Customers love to be on social media and share that, their purchase of said pen is helping destroy really potent greenhouse gases and making our impact on climate change something that we can actually address and solve. And so the possibilities are endless. Kirsten mentioned that we've destroyed over 5.7 million tons of non-CO2 gases today, and our goal is to destroy over 3 million tons. That is only possible by working with small and medium-sized businesses, looking at your supply chain, obtaining that knowledge. Remember, there's over 300 million small businesses around the globe. So imagine if everyone purchased a ton today, just 1 ton, $17, just 1 ton. That could be a huge amount of impact on how we can apply climate solutions today. So it's a really big impact that we all have the power to do. And we're hoping to be able to just provide clarity and information. So yeah, it's one thing I guess I want to stress is that we can do something today. So if you were here in the beginning of the call, we talked about some of the reasons why we were pulled towards being a part of the climate story. And that's something that you can do today too. So we want to open it up for questions and kind of dive a bit deeper in the conversation.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you too. That's a really fantastic presentation. I think you hit on some of the key elements. I'm going to let the kind of questions get primed a little bit. Sort of been asking people in the background, and again, as a reminder to everyone who's listening in, feel free to put your questions in the chat window. I'll pick them up, and kind of get them sequenced into the work with Kristen and folks here. So first, Jenny, Kristen. So let me start. I'll start with here. Amazing presentation. I think one of the key attributes in here that I think is also a lesson learned is, not every offset is the same, right? I think one of the key elements in this whole presentation, and also the concepts of carbon offsets, aren't necessarily all the same. So where I'm kind of headed is, and you and I, we all talked about this yesterday, it's almost like we need some, again, the point of the series, education, but rebranding around this, right? Because what you're doing is actually even more impactful than carbon offsetting. Right? When you look at the refrigerants, when you look at the methane, when you look at the halon as an example, right? I mean, those gases are beyond toxic, right? They're ripping holes. I mean, think about what was the aerosol back in cans back in the day that were ripping holes in the ozone layer, right? Well, thank God we've gone away from that. But I think the refrigerants are the similar chemicals, right? Those are the things that are creating those holes in the ozone. But thankfully, in the 70s and 80s, we actually had an initiative to slow that down. You guys are actually picking that up and completing the process in going after refrigerants and destroying them. So the real question, kind of, I just want you guys to elaborate on is, how, again, for the audience here, right? I mean, how are you kind of helping people to understand, other than series like this, that, carbon offset is not, I mean, it's a catch-all, but it's not really a great phrasing. It's almost like it's antiquated. Like we need almost a new vernacular out there, and kind of where you guys at the education side of things. Like, I mean, I think what you guys are doing is sometimes lost in the clutter that's out there, and you almost want to create clear air and separation from the legacy thinking around carbon and carbon offsets, and focus and drill into the fact that what you guys are doing is actually not offsetting carbon, but it's actually even more impactful. So Jenny, do you want to talk to, or Kirsten, whoever wants to jump in? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so it really is an education piece, and we like to talk about it as a climate benefit, and not just a climate benefit, right, but a new climate benefit, because time is involved here. Just a quick kind of overview of the carbon offset market. It is really, our carbon offset credits were created as a financial tool for solutions to happen. And so you really need to think about what's the solution, right? The carbon offset credit is the mechanism in which it happens. And so
I'm
if
sorry,
not for us.
just to jump in on that also is about 20, 25 years old. I think a lot of people don't realize that the holding carbon. I mean, I was doing carbon offsets at eBay back in, the 2010, 2011 kind of time frame.
Yeah.
So carbon offsets kind of go back all the way to I believe the early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, they've been around for some time, and there's a regulated market in California that I think really kind of pushed the idea of a carbon market and the power that it can have. But the offset credit, again, is just the financial mechanism. And so you really need to look at the solutions and the projects that they're helping to fund. And so we like to talk about the climate benefits that were happening and do a lot of education just around the projects themselves. So you talked about refrigerants. Refrigerants are 10,000, or the CFC refrigerants, I should say, are 10,900 times more potent than CO2. And so us collecting just one canister of old refrigerants is 134 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. And so the work that we're doing is really important, and it's really just educating people on that. It's more about a cleanup story versus you're purchasing a carbon offset credit. We're cleaning up a mess that we all participated in, big industry participated in, but we all needed air conditioning. These were the solutions we used. Halons were also the solution we had, and now we're moving to newer generation solutions, largely in part to the Montreal Protocol that you mentioned that banned the production of these as well as the aerosol cans. So that banned the production, but it didn't create a solution for end of life. So all of that product that was created is still sitting out there. In fact, MIT did a study in 2020 saying that there's 9 billion metric tons of CFCs alone still distributed around the world. So there's a lot of cleanup to be done. And again, the carbon offset credit is really just that financial mechanism for us to go out and do the work. Halons are very similar too. They're 6,900 times more potent than CO2. And then you have methane, which is 80 times more potent, but they're short-lived climate pollutants. So essentially what they do is create a blanket around the atmosphere that increases or accelerates climate change in the short term. So the solutions that we're working on is really cleaning up old messes and buying us time to address carbon in a more serious and scalable way. And so would love to hear your feedback around how to best get that message out there. We try different mediums. As you mentioned, there's print, we do video, we do interviews like this, or we do webinars like this, excuse me. We've been on different podcasts. We've been on Planet Many, which actually help to get that awareness out there too. And so there's a number of different ways, but it really is about education, trying to cut through the clutter and really talk about the solutions that need to happen. And how we finance those solutions through the carbon markets is secondary, but it's really the solution itself that we need to dial in on and bring education and awareness around.
Yeah, me personally, I really respond well with animated explainers. And so if you just see someone making something and then someone's like, hey, that's incredibly toxic, they stopped making it and then it just is sitting there. And it's a lot of this toxic material. And so it's just sitting there. Everyone stopped making it, but it's basically just this floating gas. And we had a guest here ask how it's actually destroyed. They're in these canisters that will eventually leak. They are leaking right now. They will rust. Some of the canisters that we receive have gaping holes in them, or they're starting to rust on the side. And that's just what happens to these canisters. So basically, we're collecting it, we're controlling it so that we reduce any chance of there being any leakage as we're gathering all of these things, and then it's incinerated. And so that's basically the process that we use to get rid of it. So there's a problem. Sometimes it's identified and everyone's simply somewhat walked away from once the problem has been identified. That's where Tradewater comes in to actually close the loop of, great, you identified a problem. Now let's actually solve said problem so that we can move forward based on what we know now.
And just really quickly, I always know there's a follow-up question when we say incinerate, and they say, well, doesn't that create CO2? And so just wanted to clarify in that we are using destruction capacity that has to be 99.99% effective via the Montreal Protocol standards. And this is part of the problem. There are not a lot of facilities that can meet that standard around the world. So we pay, as Jenny said, to collect it and control it, what oftentimes means moving it around the world to make sure that it is destroyed properly. But all of those emissions associated with both incineration and travel to get to destruction facilities are deducted from the tons that we are generating. And so because they're so potent, that portion of CO2 that's created through either the shipping of the products or their destruction is so minimal compared to the overall impact, but it is accounted for. And if you want to dig deeper, all of our paperwork and protocol documentation is available online for you just to look at.
Right. And again, great. You sort of proactively answered one of the questions that's out there about the gases and them being destroyed, right? Which is awesome. But also want to kind of double click again here too, because I think this is one of the showcases around this educational piece here in clarifying, the differences that are out there. The truly impactful offsets, which you guys represent, right, still need to be people need to be educated on what that really is. So specifically, you guys focused initially on CFCs, right? Refrigerants are like the worst of the worst of the worst, right? And I'm not even sure people fully understand that still, right? Because we haven't thought about refrigerants for so long. People don't even remember what a refrigerant is. Like, oh my God, it's a gas that sits in the back of a refrigerator, right? But so, okay, let's park that for 1 second. But then you also talked about halon, which is a typical gas used in a lot of fire suppression systems. People go back and forth in that because, yeah, it's great fire retardant, but unfortunately when you deploy it, it kills people. So it's gone away from that. I remember my data center days, we debated water versus halon quite a bit. And eventually it came out to, it's like, okay, I'm willing to lose computers versus people. So we'll go mostly water-based, but regardless, halon. So in the pecking order, though, I guess is where my question's going. And then you also talk about methane. And methane's another gas that, again, right or wrong, education. I mean, I start thinking about cows, and I start thinking about beef, and I start thinking about the narrative that's out there that when it comes to all the cows are farting and methane's being released, and that's even more, problematic than carbon, methane. So again, we haven't even talked about carbon here, right? Which I think is actually part of the education piece, right? But what we're talking about are things that are even worse than carbon, right? So so I'm kind of going in, how did you guys prioritize from CFCs, to halon, to methane? And then what else is sort of in the bag of tricks that you guys are looking at and evaluating as far as substances that are out there that people should know about that are even worse than carbon, quite frankly?
Yeah, and your audio is a little weird, so I'm going to repeat a little bit of what you said. So I was really trying to understand, how did we come to this focus of CFCs and halons and methane, and why those in particular gases you'd mentioned, we haven't even touched on carbon. And it's really a strategic decision from our leadership to focus on CFCs were our first project because they were identified as the worst or the number one thing that we can do to prevent catastrophic climate change by Project Drawdown, a number of other scientists out there. They're just extremely potent, and we found a place that we can play because nobody else wants to deal with them. So there are reclaimers out there in the actual refrigerant space that do deal with refrigerants. We're not the only ones that collect these things, but we're the only ones collecting them for the purpose of destruction and to have that environmental benefit. And part of the problem, particularly with refrigerants, is because they're distributed all over the world. It is truly a scavenger hunt for us. We have a team that's based in Costa Rica that is going all around trying to figure out where these are, working with local governments, trying to find different stockpiles. And then there's also a lot of consumer quantities. So here in the US, if you have just a little tiny can of CFC refrigerant, say you had an old car that you're working on, or you used to work in HVAC, those tiny distributed quantities nobody wants to deal with because there's so many of them. But we've created a network and an operational system in order to collect those. We call it small scale aggregation. And all those little bits add up to a whole lot. Kind of what Jenny was saying, even all small businesses doing something individually may not seem like a lot, but collectively it means a great deal of difference. Just one of those little cans is 14 tons. So if we collect 100 of them, we're aggregating them, and we're dedicated to doing that hard work. There's also other complications around Basel Convention. Some deem this a hazardous waste, some don't. And so there's a bunch of hurdles that have to be overcome. And we've just made the decision. We're gonna do it. We're gonna figure it out, and we're gonna get it done. Halons are similar, and that no one is really focused on them. So we found a way to create the systems to identify them and destroy them. It's also an ozone depleting substance. It falls under the same protocols for collection and destruction as refrigerant. So it made a natural transition for us to add it to the portfolio. Methane is a new one. It's one that we're adding. We'll have our first project completed in Q1 of next year. And you mentioned methane. People always think about cows farting. My daughter used to say that that's what my job was because I tried to explain this very complex concept to her, and she tells everyone, "My mom collects cow farts." But
there's your marketing right there, cow farts. I got it. I love it. This is people
yes,
will pay
but,
attention to that, right? There's a whole campaign here.
Yes, but in fact, we're actually collecting methane from abandoned and orphaned gas wells. So these are oil and gas wells that where drilling happens, and when you have initial drilling happen, you have a lot of companies coming out, but some of those were not viable, or some of them actually had additional toxins that came out of the well that made it not viable to collect oil and gas, but they just left them. A lot of these companies were disbanded, they went bankrupt, and so there's millions of these sitting on properties. We're actually in Indiana, and there are hundreds of thousands of wells in the Midwest alone that have just been left. And so methane is consistently leaking from these oil and gas wells. There is some government funding, but it's not nearly enough. So we're working with local governments to plug these wells. And again, methane, understanding this conversation around how do we get to decarbonization, how do we do that? These things are left out of the conversation. So we decided to take a strategic approach to focus on non-CO2 gases. And these are the three that we're focused on now. There's plenty of work to be done in all three of these areas. But if other opportunities arise, we'll definitely look at it. We're an entrepreneurial solution-based company. We tend to run to the problem versus away from it. And so that's kind of where we got to where we are. But it was a very much conscious strategic decision to focus on non-CO2 gases that are incredibly potent.
And I would say that sometimes when we're having these types of conversations, and rightfully so, people get a bit emotional about, we're talking about like people not taking accountability, basically, or organizations not taking accountability. I can sit in my office right now and mull that over and pull my hair out and get really frustrated, or I can put my shoes on and do something about it. And so I think that it's a two-sided story. We're actually doing something about the problem now. And when people do come together and address a problem and start solving it, the bad actors start to have to change. They have to, because there's too many people that are knowledgeable, they're empowered, they've got the resources and the tools, like we're all armored up and we know more. And once that happens, it also influences long-term change. So I hear your frustration if you're feeling that way. I hear that too, but we can sit and be frustrated, or we can do something about it and really make a stand for what we believe in, which is accountability and cleaning up messes.
Yeah. And one last point, like you mentioned, carbon is an important part of the conversation, but we have to address all of these things. The IPCC just put out a report that if we don't address non-CO2 gases, there's no way we can avoid reaching 1.5 degrees of warming. So all of these solutions have to happen. We're not saying one's better than the other. We just have strategically focused on these for the reasons I mentioned. But it's going to take everyone being on board, as Jenny mentioned, and it's going to take us looking at all of the solutions collectively if we want to have a fighting chance. Uh-oh, we can't hear you. No, we're still not hearing you. So maybe a Bluetooth connection with the headphones. While you're figuring that, I'm looking at the chat. They asked if we have customers in Asia, and yes, we do. We have customers in Asia from an individual standpoint. If you, as an individual, want to go to our website, you can go on our e-commerce platform and purchase carbon offset credits. We have customers all over the world. We've also worked with folks to collect old refrigerants in Asia. We actually have a project in Thailand that's going to yield 1 million tons over the next year. So we're global in terms of where we sell our carbon offset credits, but who we work with to collect these greenhouse gases as well.
Okay, testing.
Good,
yeah.
You're back.
Yeah, there we go. Just flip the switch, on and off, like all answers, right? So turn your headset on and off. Okay, so again, fabulous. I mean, the information you guys are pulling out here, right? I mean, there's a follow-on series here, which is the recasting or redying of what climate solutions truly are. Because again, I think, this is why I kind of bring up the historical context. We've been aimed and sold on and told to focus exclusively on carbon. And unfortunately, that's become the soundbite. And there's an education process right now that climate solutions are way more varied than that, as you guys are describing today. And in fact, through our learnings and evolution, realizing, not only is attacking carbon, but as you are putting here, CFCs, methane, halon. I mean, there's other more offensive chemicals that are out there that we should be addressing, that you guys are addressing. And I think that's also something about Tradewater that's unique, right? That your commitment is really about practical solutions that make sense, right? And I think to me, there's a bullet point there, right? That not everybody in the climate space is a good actor, right? Unfortunately, I mean, that's just a fact, right? But I think the difference here in the education that we got to do collectively is to tell people that, move away the clutter. Maybe we cross this different names, but there are even things that are more offensive than carbon that we should be focusing on, or, bringing in, like in our world, circularity, right? I mean, that's a topic you'd think everyone would be all over, but just like you guys trying to like beat your head against the wall, going like, how are people like not getting this? I mean, we are literally going after things that are, as you put, I think the refrigerants are 1,000 times worse in some respects, or whatever.
10,900.
Yeah, 10,000. I mean, you know what I mean? Again, the numbers are so big. It's like, how are you not dealing with this? It seems so obvious, right? So again, kind of hidden in there is a question I'm getting to, which is, as you guys are kind of coming out of this, you guys have been at this for 4 or 5 years. So one of the other things about Tradewater that's unique is you've been at it for a while, right? And you have longevity and growth. So clearly you're doing something right. What are you guys looking forward, as we come out of the pandemic, still, it seems like we're saying that, we kind of kick everything back into normal drives. What are you guys looking at in this sort of world of sustainability and kind of these, what you guys are doing? How do you see that evolving in 2023? What do you see kind of coming up both for Tradewater, but then also the industry as a whole, right, with this kind of re-education that's going on?
Yeah, I can. You want to go, Jenny, or you want me to?
I mean, me personally, I'm just speaking about the culture of it. I think that my main goal, and I think a lot of our goals, is to give everyone a voice, and an active voice, not just one that's disappointed, one that's actually educated and knowledgeable without putting a unnecessary burden on their business or on themselves. So that's where I see the industry going, is that everyone is equipped with knowing what labels are, what businesses are doing good things, and what are the ones that need to work on the way that they do their business practices. So I'm excited about that in the culture of the space.
Yeah. I would just piggyback on that and saying that we'd hope that climate action and being a responsible consumer, business leader, so on and so forth, becomes embedded in decisions versus being an afterthought. I think we're starting to move toward that route, right? Instead of saying, oh, we're going to do our business and we're going to look at the bottom line and then we're going to think about sustainability. It should be like, no, that's a part of our decision process. Even as a consumer, I think we're really starting to feel the effects, unfortunately. And so that becomes imperative that it's upfront and it's included. It's not a secondary thought. For Tradewater specifically, as I mentioned, we call them BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, of reaching 3 million tons just in 2023. And we're really, really close. I think we're going to hit it.
Sorry, say that one more time. So you guys are currently, I'm glad you said that, because again, I think this is important for people to understand. For Tradewater specifically, you guys started with a certain goal, and over 3 or 4 years, you hit so many metric tons, but now your annual rate of destruction is almost the equivalent of what you've taken 5 years to go destroy, if I remember correctly.
That is correct. Yep. And
okay.
We're very,
and those
very
numbers are?
We've done 5.7 to date for the last 6 years.
Million
and
cubic
we're hoping
tons?
to, yes, tons,
Wow.
metric tons of CO2e.
Wow.
And we're hoping to do 3 million tons just in 2023 alone. And from and how that's happened is the scaling of it, right? So we reinvest all of our profit right back into scaling this project. And so just in that regard, you could kind of see it's worked. We're adding methane, and we really believe that we will destroy 3 million tons in 2023. And now it's just a matter of finding those partners that support that work, so then we can scale and do it again. We want to set another BHAG of maybe 10 million right after that.
Right? There's an easy follow-on question to that, which is sort of what's your estimated total metric tons for refrigerants that exist in the world today? What's your target?
So There's 9 billion metric tons of it still left around the world. So there's plenty of
9
work to
billion
be
metric
done.
tons of refrigerant alone.
With a B, yes. And then
Wow.
you talk about, what's next, right? We just signed on
Yeah.
to the Kigali Amendment as the U.S., which now looks at HFC, which is that next generation of refrigerants. And so once those move into a point where they have been phased out, we'll look to also collect and destroy those as well. We
And
wouldn't do that.
HFCs today are not included in that 9 billion CFC number. Is that correct?
No, CFCs alone is the 9 billion.
Billion.
Then you also
and
have
then how many?
HCFCs.
Yeah, how much of the HFCs coming, do you think?
I don't want to give an estimate because they're still being used and produced. That phase out period, I believe, ends in 2023 or 4.
Yeah, coming up.
So once that has been completely phased out, then we'll address that as well.
And I'm going to ask the same question here because, again, this data makes things real, right? And I think this is one of the key differentiators here with Tradewater specifically, or anybody who's listening that wants to get into kind of offsets or doing research. Look for data, look for numbers. If you want to test the veracity of claims and there's no data behind it, well, then it's smoke and mirrors. You guys come at this with real practical experience, and that experience, like a first mover advantage, gives you truly competitive advantage as you move forward and how to truly scale this up. So when we get back, because I think the number is important, we're going to be running out of time here in a second, but CFCs we caught, and we could go for hours, and there'll be a follow-up. But refrigerant, we're looking at about 8 billion metric tons currently. That's the target market. You're up to 3, you've done 5, right? So you've tackled roughly, if I'm doing my math right, 0.1% of the global opportunity for destruction. So you got a lot of room to grow. Number 2, Halon, how big is that?
Halon is about 300 million tons globally.
Okay. So again, not as prolific as, say, refrigerants, but still 300 million metric tons is nothing to sneeze at. Okay, right. How about the methane? That's an interesting one. You talked about a lot of wells, but that's I don't even know how you quantify that.
Yeah,
right? We're not talking about, you guys are not to talk about cows. Let's be real specific here.
No.
I mean, we're joking about cows and cow farts, but on the serious side, and for Lisa who's listening, that's my last cow fart reference, so I know she's in the audience. But specifically though, is methane that's being released out of wells or mines or things of that nature. Is there a way to put a quantifiable number around that?
So it's tough. There are some estimates out there, but the problem is because they've been abandoned and orphaned from the oil and gas wells specifically, no one's actively measuring them, right? So we're actually in the field this week. We've got a team out in Indiana doing our second round of measurement on wells, and some wells are very gassy. We call them gassy wells, and some are not as gassy. So it's hard to really put a stamp on it, but we can share some resources. We're now getting into this too, so I'm not as versed in some of those numbers, so I don't want to misspeak, but I can send some follow-up here just on what the EPA estimates in the US alone. But it's probably 4 times greater just based on our initial reads. We had one really, really gassy well that was almost 1 million tons, I believe, just in one well. So there's still work to be done there. And that's just one source of methane, as you mentioned. You also have animals, and you also have old coal mines, which we've done projects in that before too. We've just moved our focus over to abandoned oil and gas wells. And I'm going to drop something into the chat too that I think might be an interesting resource. We have a partner in Giving Green who have gone out and evaluated different climate benefit projects, and we're very proud to say that we're one of the recommendations, but there's some others on there, and they also give some resources on what to look for in climate projects too. So I'll drop that in the chat as well.
Outstanding. Don't mean to be curt, but do want to keep on time. So we've got about 60 seconds left here, if you will. Might bleed over a minute, but parting thoughts, just kind of wrapping things up, and I'll close everything off when you guys are done. Jenny, start with you. Any parting thoughts, closing, kind of?
Do your research like you would do anything else. So you look up recipes that you're planning on cooking, you look at tips and tricks, all of that. Dedicate that same amount of time to educating yourself on the best climate solutions. We've given some tools for you here, but feel free to do some of the work yourself. Dedicate 30 minutes to it. Give your voice some power by partnering with organizations like us, or just educating yourself on what you could do, and reach out anytime. I would love to spend 9 hours in one day just talking to you all and answering questions. And so reach out. I put emails in there. You can also just go info@tradewater.us. That just goes to our full email inbox, but we put our individual ones in chat as well.
Yeah, and I would just say kind of in closing that the small is mighty and that we don't have to be hopeless about climate action and climate change, and that there are real things that you can support now. As Jenny said, do your research and support what feels best to you, because all of the solutions need to happen, but it just takes action, and we try to make the action as easy as possible. As Jenny said, we're here as a resource because it's really our mission to do everything that we can as a company to support climate action and to prevent catastrophic climate change. And so we hope that you'll join us in that in the way that feels best for you.
Awesome. Well, again, you guys are excellent presenters, really wonderful conversation, right? I mean, hopefully the audience also took a little bit from this. A couple things in closing too. So one, you guys had mentioned, you put some emails, there's obviously the website. You're both open to networking on LinkedIn, right? Just to highlight that. So that's usually the easiest place to find people these days. And then furthermore, just again, from a presentation, the whole presentation has been recorded. So there'll be the audio, the written, and the video will be published somewhere on the Requis site at some point. We'll send links out to everybody. And then even though this is our first one, we're going to get into a fairly regular cadence here with education. So hopefully, again, you guys are willing to come back and kind of we can update this stuff, because again, I think there's beyond what you guys are presenting, I think there's also a fairly interesting period that I'm hearing you guys kind of articulate. I'm not sure it's there in the market, that there is a growing evolution of climate solutions that are kind of being born out of some of the things that have worked and quite frankly not worked in the past. And people are getting smarter, like you guys at Tradewater, about what really has impact, what really does actually make a difference, right, today and now. And I think the focus on refrigerants, on halon, on methane, and future elements that are even more destructive or conversely impactful in our road towards sustainability are out there. And you guys represent not only a company, but I think a trend, right? I think there's going to be a lot of education in the sustainability space in your areas moving forward. So people stay tuned. I think you got a lot of great data here. I mean, I think again, we didn't really talk about carbon much, but we talked about things that people should know are even worse, right? And I think those sound bites need to start getting out there into the community. So great set of information today. Really wonderful presentation. Thank you all very much. And hopefully the audience had a good time today as well too, and learned a little bit. But thanks everybody for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard. This is great. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thank you.